Today's episode of Shout Outs and Rants, we have the quintet of Tom Fox, Jay Rosen, Jonathan Marks, Jonathan Armstrong, and Matt Kelly. Shout Outs and Rants sections. But we'll keep the same order, starting with Mr. Armstrong.
Well, I need special permission from you, Tom, to do a first. I want to give a conditional shout out. And in 4 hours' time, the BBC will either broadcast or not broadcast the Have I Got News tribute to Boris Johnson's prime ministership. I was fortunate enough through my daughter winning the ballot of being there for the taping of the show. So have I got news for you? For those who are not familiar with it, it's like an intellectual version of Saturday Night Live. Panelists get together, discuss the events of the day, and the Boris Johnson tribute edition. I can't tell you what went on at the recording, but my prediction will be that the tribute edition will not be a bed of roses for Boris Johnson. And we already believe that there are some in the Johnson administration who'd rather it wasn't broadcast at all. People close to Johnson have been nominated to senior positions in the BBC after the BBC was said to be overcritical of the Johnson regime. They criticised the BBC on the basis of balance. But just because somebody is a crook or close to crooks, you don't need to balance things by finding somebody else who's close to crooks before you can run the story. When the Conservative Party briefed rightly against Tony Blair for being too close to Bernie Ecclestone, the same Conservative Party didn't say, oh, and by the way, you can't run the story we're briefing unless you can find somebody in the Conservative Party that's got too close to a Formula One supremo. That isn't what fair balance is about. Fair balance is about telling a story fairly. And if somebody's crooked, you tell the story of them being crooked fairly. If somebody's a serial liar, you tell the story of him being a serial liar fairly. So, my shout out is to the BBC in the expectation that in 4 hours' time, or actually less than that, 4 hours' time, they'll do the right thing and broadcast the program largely unedited as I saw it live on Wednesday night. And it is definitely a conditional shout out. And if anybody from the BBC is listening, I'm sure you have many on your Rolodex, Tom. Just fair warning that if you don't live up to my expectations, you'll also be my rant next time we meet.
Excellent. Matt Kelly.
Yes, I'm going to have a shout out this time because I think we have slipped into mini rants throughout the entire previous hour here. My shout out actually is to the NASA engineers on the Artemis lunar launch for scrapping the launch that was supposed to take place on, I think it was Monday, because of leaky fuel lines. And they postponed it at least until tomorrow. We are recording this on a Friday. They're now hopefully launching on Saturday. But even then, if they have not yet diagnosed and resolved the leaky fuel line problem, and they have to postpone it again, I think they might wind up having to postpone it for several weeks until whatever sort of planetary lunar alignment happens again. But that is a tough call to do. I know everybody wanted the lunar rocket to launch. My son is a big space enthusiast. He's very young and he was very excited. And then he was disappointed to see the lunar launch get delayed. So it's just a reminder that we have to do this and have to take good safety risk management, even when it sucks that you have to do it. I think we all learned that lesson tragically the hard way back in 1986 when NASA turned a blind eye to the Space Shuttle Challengers. I think it was the O-ring fuel system that they ignored cracks there, which blew up, and then it killed the 7 astronauts back in January of 1986. I'm glad to see that the safety first culture of NASA has now revived and taken root. And it is another reminder that in an ethics and compliance way or in an internal audit risk management way, you do have to do these things occasionally, even when that really leaves a disappointing feel for a whole lot of people. So thank you to the Artemis people for erring on the side of caution and to get that up sooner or later. But if it has to be later to do it well, then so be it.
Jonathan Marks, do you have a shout out and or rant for us today?
Yeah, Matt, I don't know if you know this, but when they scrapped the mission and the astronauts went back to their quarters, they actually fed them Bluebell ice cream. So it's kind of interesting afternoon. But yeah, I have a little bit of a shout out. I don't know if you guys have seen this, probably have, but happy birthday to the United States Federal Sentencing Guideline and publishing some interesting things in there. Some of this is a blinding glimpse of the obvious, but they point out not having a compliance program actually affects organizations. But the more interesting fact, which I thought was really interesting, I really have to check this because it says since fiscal 1992, the overwhelming majority of organizational offenders, 89.6%, did not have any compliance and ethics program. Think about that. That's bizarre.
Jay Rosen, do you have a shout out and or rant for us?
I have a shout out, and I'm going to ride the coattails of Matt on this one. It's another space themed. If humans want to explore Mars in the future, they'll need to create oxygen. Now there's a small device the size of a toaster, and it's on the planet, and it's doing just that. And a study released this week, researchers from MIT showed that the Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization experiment, known as Moxie, can make oxygen from carbon dioxide, which is abundant in Mars's atmosphere. The experiment, part of NASA's Perseverance rover mission that landed on Mars in February of 2021, is the first time resources from another planet have been transformed into something useful for human missions. The small box created by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory and MIT makes enough oxygen to match the output of a small tree on Earth and can do it during the day and night during multiple Martian seasons. So kudos to NASA, JPL, and MIT for getting the U.S. space program back in the game.
And since we have moved from our typical rants to some shout outs today, maybe I'll not rant about our beloved governor in the state of Texas, but I will shout out to the Houston Astros, who with a record of 84 and 47 have the best record in the American League. They have the second best record behind the Los Angeles Dodgers in all of baseball. Justin Verlander, 39 years old, is leading the league in ERA and wins at this point, although he's currently on the injured list. Hopefully he'll be back in mid to late September and can continue this streak. For those who have faulted the Astros for winning with cheating, now we're winning without cheating. So that's my shout out to the Houston Astros for the best record in the American League. Gentlemen,
Awesome.
as always, a great episode, and I can't wait till we get the whole 5 quintet back together and our next recording. So have a great life. This is Tom Fox again. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Shout Outs and Rants, and I hope you'll join us again in a couple of weeks when we have our next episode of Shout Outs and Rants. Everything Compliance, episode 104, the Back to School edition, will post on Thursday, September 8th. Check out the full episode for the gang's full comments.